welcome back to Blue Door Pub Thunder. Shit. Welcome back to Blue Door Pub Thunderdome. Well, you know, I'm leaving that in. For another bowl with Andy Carlson, Minnesota's 87th best daily podcast, show about everything and nothing, coming at your ass 5 days a week. Actually talking about sports this week. I know it's crazy. Sitting in is BJ, or do I call you Robert? Reidell.
BJ is good.
All right, now is it Reidell or Reidell?
It's Reidell.
Okay, so it's not Reidell like the helmet.
A little bit different. Reidell like the bread.
Now, I guess that makes sense. Tell a friend, spread the word, iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and bullshow.co. And also follow me on all the various social media at Andy Carlson Show, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. We had a conversation about the future viability of Snapchat. You're not buying in, even though you're a young buck.
I am not buying in on that, no.
Yeah. Well, how old are you?
I'm 25 years old.
Oh, well, shit. Yeah. No, you just wait. As I'm the old guy, I'm the 30-year-old pushing Snapchat. It's coming. Yeah.
All I'm saying is if I'm not into it and I'm the 25-year-old here, how high can the ceiling really be?
Yeah, except, DJ, think of all the chicks. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like, I'm getting my feet wet on Snapchat. It's mainly about the chicks.
You're not wrong about that either.
Yeah.
But in terms of sports and how it relates to sports marketing, how many chicks are really involved that hard on Snapchat that it would be?
Well, it's all the jersey chasers.
It's actually a pretty solid market there, I think, too.
Yeah.
So.
Man. Coming in, talking some Vikings NFL draft here. And also, this is going to appear on Purple for the Win, so check that out on Thursday. But, BJ, got you in. Why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself? Where'd you come from? Where'd you go?
Sure. I am BJ Reidell. I am a 2010 graduate of Cretin-Derham Hall High School, St. Paul native. Went to Marquette University, graduated there in 2014. And I moved over to the Bismarck Tribune for a couple of years, so I lived in beautiful Bismarck, North Dakota. And I've been covering the Vikings since I graduated in May 2014, on and off a little bit. And currently I'm working for VikingsTerritory.com and doing a podcast with Drew Mahold, the About the Labor podcast, also covering the Minnesota Vikings.
We don't plug other. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. No, subscribe to it. It's good stuff. And also Drew looks like Manziel, so there you go.
Yeah, it's a double whammy there.
Yeah. He's got about as good a chance to get back in the league as Manziel.
I would say it's probably pretty close. I think you're onto something there for sure.
Also onto something is if you're buying or selling in the Twin Cities market, Josh Pelto, Remax Preferred. You know him, love him. And, hey, you going to buy a house?
Speaking of plugging in guys that speaking of plugging in guys that are against our sponsors, my dad is from Remax Results, so he's actually against my name. So,
well, there you go.
We're on the same page now. We're level.
Hey, mofos. If you're buying a house in the Twin Cities area or selling, go with Josh Pelto, Remax Preferred. Not, what's your dad's name? Oh, Robert. Yeah.
Reidell.
Not Robert Reidell. Get out of here. You know him, 763-213-4617. Give him a call. He'll actually pick up, unlike Robert Reidell. No, I'm just kidding. Is it slander or libel when it's spoken? I think libel's
libel.
Written.
I would say libel, yeah.
That's always been a running joke when we say something defamatory or could be interpreted as defamatory. It's like, is it slander or libel? But Josh Pelto is not slanderous or libel. 763-213-4617, joshpelto.com. Also, he's a Vikings fan. You can talk some stuff with you. Is your dad a Vikings fan?
He's not. I actually don't know where I got my Viking fandom from.
Wait, so he's a male who grew up in the Twin Cities area. So he's a hockey fan? North Stars?
He's actually not a sports fan at all. I know, it's weird. He started working at a very young age and got into real estate when he was 16, and that kind of took over his life, I think, for the most part.
Now, that always strikes me as odd, because I feel like alpha males who are very hardcore and professional into their career just naturally drift towards sports.
He's a baseball fan to some degree. He's kind of fair weather. I mean, he'll go to a Twins game. He'll talk Twins. He'll watch them if they're on TV. But he doesn't know who the number 7 hitter in the order is by any means.
Who is number 7?
Actually, right now, I'm not too sure. It might be Byron Buxton at this point. He's kind of dropping down since that opening day lineup. So,
all right, so let's hop in right away.
Absolutely.
Macro thoughts on the 2017 NFL Draft.
You know, it was absolutely crazy. The first night, for sure, was...
It was great TV.
It really was. It was absolutely bananas. And as a Vikings fan, you know, obviously try to be objective about stuff, but when you're watching the draft and the team you're covering isn't on the clock until midday on Friday, and you're not really expecting much excitement on the first night of the draft.
But they still had the Vikings draft party.
Immediately, right from the get-go, the Bears made things interesting with the Mitch Trubisky pick, which was just, that was something special for sure. I think Ryan Pace might actually be trying to get fired at this point to get out of his relationship with.
Here's my theory. If you give up that much for a franchise quarterback, you can always walk into the Hallis's office and be like, this is my guy. We need to give him a couple years. And also, he kept John Fox on to be like, if it doesn't work out, well, it's the coaching, right? You should let me pick my own coach. So I think it's actually smart on Ryan Pace's. Not smart to trade up for Mitch Trubisky when you're bidding against yourself. No one was. I still don't buy that anyone was going to trade up to 2 to take Trubisky.
I didn't see it either.
I have zero I have zero belief that the Browns were in play to trade up to 2.
The one thing I will say about that is, Jared Goff and Carson Wentz both got mega deals for teams to move up to grab them as quarterbacks. The quarterback position, when it's watered down like it was this season, I feel like there's a lot of teams that kind of make that mistake. And, this year was the Bears. I guess you can kind of make a case for Kansas City making a similar mistake with the Pat Mahomes deal.
Well, you're biased because you were in Bismarck against Carson Wentz.
I did follow Carson Wentz for a couple of years, so
I don't think he's going to be good.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I told a lot of people in Bismarck that North Dakota, there's kind of a feud between the UND people and the NDSU people. So if you're a UND person, you hate Carson Wentz. If you're an NDSU person, you bleed Carson Wentz.
Well, I get that it's a cool story. Like, North Dakota doesn't have any athletes except for Phil Jackson, and that was a long time ago. Now he's ruining basketball teams. But I understand that Carson Wentz checks all the boxes of what you would want in a quarterback. But as we've seen, look at the top quarterbacks now. They don't exactly check all the boxes when it comes to arm strength, physicality, etc. It's all above the neck when it comes to quarterback play. I don't think Carson Wentz has it.
Wentz, he absolutely has all the intangibles. He's a great kid. Hey, I'm rooting for him. I'm just, from an objective standpoint like you, I don't see it with him. And I think you kind of saw it last season. As soon as he lost was it Lane Johnson that went into suspension? He lost some of that extra protection from the outside, and all of a sudden he started falling apart under pressure, and this was a different quarterback, and Philadelphia was a different team. So, some people are really high on him. Some people aren't.
Yep. Outside of the Vikings, which is given, who had the best draft?
There's a lot of classes that I actually really liked. Houston had one. I was very impressed with Houston's class. They finally got their quarterback, and I find it so intriguing that it was Deshaun Watson. After, a couple of years back, they missed out on Teddy Bridgewater, and I really think they're very similar quarterbacks from an intangible standpoint, so I like that one a lot. They also got my guy, Zach Cunningham, the linebacker from Vanderbilt, who, I've been slobbering over for a couple months now. So I really liked Houston's draft. I thought they did a really nice job overall. Cincinnati kind of quietly did a really nice job also, acquiring talent like Joe Mixon, where, obviously, character issues are there. We don't need to talk about that anymore, but they were acquiring talent to build around Andy Dalton and really giving him every chance to succeed. I liked what San Diego did as well, quietly.
Yeah, that's dirty.
That offense is going to be crazy between Mike Williams and Forrest Lamp, and then they got Dan Feeney as well. Essentially rebuilt half their offensive line, got another target for Phillip Rivers. That could be an electric offense next season.
Yeah, Vikings fans are starting to get excited when they saw Forrest Lamp falling, but maybe it was a case of groupthink. Maybe we all sort of overthought him. Maybe the NFL didn't rate him as high because of the caliber of competition he played, even though he had a great game against Alabama. And I didn't think it was going to happen, but the run on offensive linemen towards the end of the second round, when Posich went, when Dawkins went, when Moton went, it makes sense why they traded up to the top of the third to take Elflein. Man, how great would it have been? Forrest Lamp just one time in the lap.
Yeah, Forrest Lamp was obviously, he's kind of the dream scenario, and it would have been great to get Forrest Lamp, but I think that Dalvin Cook is a pretty solid consolation prize for sure.
Yeah, let's dive into Dalvin Cook. Now,
absolutely.
He has his off-the-field issues, or had the off-the-field issues, but Twitter's an interesting place. We've talked about this before. There's a bunch of people were standing on the table for Joe Mixon. They're like, they were using excuses of everyone deserves a second chance and blah, 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 other than, hey, I don't care what he did. He's a good football player. I want him on my team. I wish people would just say that, but I digress. I've been over that many times. And with Cook, as soon as the Vikings traded up to take Cook and not Mixon, even though Mixon was on the board, a lot of people were like, well, Dalvin Cook has some stuff off the field too. Sure. I mean, how is that better than Joe Mixon? But diving deeper into Dalvin Cook stuff, mistreatment of dogs, bad. Yeah. Hopefully learn from that. Being found not guilty of punching the woman outside the bar.
Sure.
Did that happen? Probably not from the evidence, but I guess we'll never really know. And then, pulling a gun on a high school campus and drugs on a high school campus. I don't know. Like, there's a pattern there, but also if you get him in the right spot, away from Florida, away from his crew,
it's really big.
Yeah.
You think about the kind of the cultural aspect of where he came from. We've read about his background, where he kind of came from a tough upbringing and whatnot.
Yep.
And, the way that kind of affects an athlete, especially an athlete of his caliber playing at such a high-profile university like Florida State, that kind of stuff is going to happen. You make impulsive decisions as a kid, and when you're on a bigger stage, the decisions tend to be worse.
And not to stereotype an area, but the place, the county he grew up in, Florida, it's like, hey, if you sell drugs or pull a gun in high school, that's Tuesday. Yeah. It's a miracle that you have a kid as completely straight-laced as Teddy Bridgewater come out of that same area.
Right. Yeah. Right. I think Dalvin Cook, the thing that I kind of go back to with Cook when people talk about his character issues is that it doesn't extend to the field. He's got a really good reputation as being a great teammate, locker room presence, being a positive influence on the guys that he's working with in the backfield at Florida State and hopefully in Minnesota as well. And Jameis Winston and him had a good relationship when they were there. I remember good words about him. Jimbo Fisher obviously had plenty of nice things to say about him, even though he had some nice stuff to say about Christian Ponder a couple years back as well. But it seems like people like Dalvin Cook, so I don't want to be ignorant, but I have a tendency to kind of play some of this stuff off as being immature and just being an impulsive kid that's, he's on a pedestal down there and he thinks he can do whatever he wants, and he just made a couple dumb mistakes that don't look good on paper for sure.
Also, his high school, Miami Central, he didn't play until he was a sophomore because there was someone named Devonta Freeman kind of holding things down there. Also, Travaris Cadet, who's a decent role running back here. And then you go back to Willis McGahee and Najee Davenport. My God, that's running back high school. Yeah. That's amazing.
It's absolutely incredible. If you think about just our area here in Minnesota, if we get one professional running back, I mean, when was the last one? The actual
Marion Barber.
Is he the last Minnesota native?
Pride of Wayzata. Well, like running back wise, anyway.
Yeah. So I mean, it's absolutely absurd to see schools like that, and Thomas More is another one where they just continue to churn out quality NFL pros.
And my whole thing with Cook is like, we'll never know what happened outside of that bar.
Right.
We know what happened with Mixon.
Sure.
And the mistreatment of dogs thing, I know that people are really harping on that, but those are also the same people saying that, when Adrian beat his kid's ass with a tree, is like, that's a cultural thing. Yeah. This dog thing is also a cultural.
It's absolutely a cultural thing.
It's very, like, there's no good answer. And you're not going to convince people one way or the other, but just see how the kid does now.
Right.
Like, that's the only thing that's important. And if he has a good resource base around him, Xavier Rhodes from that area too, as well as Teddy Bridgewater, and he's just working church, I mean, it can be great things.
I think the Vikings have definitely put him in a great situation to overcome that off-field stuff. Like you said, Bridgewater and Rhodes are familiar faces, guys that grew up in his neck of the woods.
Yep.
On top of that, you get him about as far away as possible from that entourage down at Florida State. I feel like he's set up for success. It's just a matter of is he this guy that Rick Spielman believes he is? Is he this guy that is never going to be an issue off the field once again?
Yeah.
I trust Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman to do their homework.
A little off topic, and then we'll actually move on to football. Sure. So 3 local PDs. Which one shruggies the most? The shruggy emoticon. Tallahassee, Florida, Norman, Oklahoma, or Waco, Texas. So Florida State, Oklahoma, Baylor.
You really can't go wrong here. I would say, honestly, based off of recent events, I would go Waco, Texas. I think that's probably, they're able to hide things more because it's not the University of Texas. You know? So for that reason, I would say that they probably could sweep a few more things under the rug, and it certainly seems like they did sweep a few things under the rug.
Underlying, that's one of the main disadvantages of the Gophers here in the Twin Cities. That's a major media market. Like, they're going to hold you accountable to your shit. But then you look at, like, those three schools and what happened at Penn State. They're very small, insulated communities where the town lives and dies with that school and that program, whereas Twin Cities here is like, oh, yeah, the Gophers did terrible things. Well, we'll shut it down. Blink, nothing happens.
Yeah. It's, it's a whole different world. In Minnesota, just really is it's such a disadvantage. This is it's a topic for another day completely, but just on top of the mass media market down here in Minneapolis, on top of the fact that we don't have great recruiting like they do down in Texas, California, Florida, Minnesota just really, the Gophers don't really have a chance.
Well, hopefully PJ Fleck will turn that around, but we can't even keep guys like that Wyoming center that got drafted. We can't even keep him in state.
You just wait until we start talking next year with Wyoming quarterback that's going to be coming out of here. That Matt Miller from Bleacher Report, for example, believes is going to be the top quarterback taken.
Oh yeah,
you're going to have some Gopher fans throwing some real fits after that one.
Oh, he's from here.
He went to Wyoming. How does Minnesota not end up with him? When, I just can't believe that the Gophers allow so many of these prospects to go to these nearby FCS schools.
Yeah,
lower profile.
Bringing it back to North Dakota, I mean, Craig Bull, NDSU, Bull the powerhouse, was actually stealing recruits. When their Division II or FBS.
Yeah.
Or FCS.
FCS.
Yeah. It's insane. Going back to Dalvin Cook.
Absolutely.
On the field, what does he bring?
Okay, this guy is one of the most well-rounded running backs in the entire class. If you don't, Joe Mixon and him are essentially kind of cut from the same cloth. I think these are two guys, Dalvin Cook especially, with well-rounded skill sets that can be developed into 3-down running backs that play for 8 to 10 years and have very, very successful careers. Cook is an extremely tough runner, finishes his runs, falls forward always, and that second gear is really his difference-making ability. What kind of, in my mind, makes him a blue-chip running back is that second gear to kind of get to the next level and break away from SEC, ACC players and really leave them in the dust. And, if you watch his film, his ability to get to the edge and absolutely burn down the sideline, it's second to none in this draft class. So Vikings are absolutely getting an explosive threat that can be creative and create his own runs, even if the the offensive line doesn't improve its run blocking.
Why did he drop in the draft?
Number one reason is that the character concerns that we already talked about. Obvious. Number two thing being that medical issue with his shoulder. A lot of question marks there. Rick Spielman said it checked out with his staff. I mean, we trust Eric Sugarman for everything else. I trust him for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so how do you envision this impacting Jerick McKinnon, newly signed Latavius Murray's role? Like week one out of the gate, how is this going to be divvied up?
I really think that Dalvin Cook is going to have every opportunity in the world to come out of the gate as the featured back in Minnesota. I think what makes the most sense in my head is to allow Dalvin Cook to be the first and second down guy. Use Latavius Murray on third down, particularly because he is a better, more polished run pass protector, and that's the main issue that Dalvin Cook faces as he transitions to the NFL is that issue with pass protection. So you kind of alleviate those concerns by keeping him off the field on third down and giving it to a veteran guy like Murray, who is refined in that ability. He's proven time and time again that he was able to protect for Derek Carr last year. We saw their vertical offense. I just think it makes the most sense for him to be the third down guy and the short yardage guy, and for Cook to kind of be a guy that gets 10 to 15 carries early on, whether it's rushes, catches out of the backfield, something like that. But you have to get this guy involved immediately. He's just too explosive of a playmaker.
I feel like we've misused Jerick McKinnon for 3 years.
Yeah, I think so too.
Slightly.
Well, I mean, you think about the times when you watch Jerick McKinnon excel, and when we get really excited about it, when they flex him out into that H-back role, whether he's either coming out of the slot or he's all the way outside, and he's running, one-cut routes that are fairly simple concepts. That was Jerick McKinnon at his best. If you think about the New York Giants games, the performances against those defenses that he's been able to have success on, it's really that that multi-dimensional skill set that's made him a difference maker, not running between the tackles.
Yep.
He's just not cut out for that role. He's too small of a body.
No, like the Dallas Thursday night game last year, the score that, with the 2-point conversion would have tied the game, him split out against Sean Lee,
right?
Like, not a contest.
Right.
And Sean Lee's a great linebacker.
Yeah, and Sean Lee is one of the very best cover linebackers in the league, but Jerick McKinnon has that explosive burst out of his first step that just, he can put linebackers to misery.
Yeah, so what's going to happen, we're not going to use McKinnon. We won't re-sign him. His deal's up. He'll just go to New England and become like a 3 times better James White.
I mean, it's very frustrating because, you say that as a joke, but if it happened, I mean, it's...
Well, I mean, with Dalvin Cook here, we're obviously rolling with him for the future as the bell cow guy. And it'll just be a spot where, like, oh, yeah, Jerick McKinnon, he had a great career. What could have been if he had came in just at a different time when he wasn't overshadowed by Adrian Peterson, wasn't overshadowed by Dalvin Cook.
Right. Yeah. Jerick McKinnon is going to be one of those guys where I think that he's kind of a storyline in himself heading into this season, both him and Murray, because it's kind of contract years for both of them.
Yep.
And obviously, that it's the de facto deal on Murray where they can get out of it after 1 year. McKinnon's basically playing for his career in Minnesota right now. It's going to be an interesting storyline to see how Pat Shurmur implements him into his offense now that it's Shurmur's show.
Next up, the only real true day one surefire starter, Pat Elflein, coming in at 70 overall, trading up because he wasn't falling to 79. But the more I think about this pick, it's not sexy overall, but just extremely rock solid. Like, this is building the foundation of your building.
Absolutely. I mean, you remember a couple of years back when the Matt Khalil pick looked really good back in 2012 when we took Khalil at number 4. That was not a sexy pick, but it was a pick that we all believed was, a foundation piece for the future, a guy that's going to be a starter, an impact maker on that blind side for years to come. Pat Elflein is in the tackle, so the value isn't quite as high, but I think you're really getting, a 10-year type guy. I personally compare him a lot to John Sullivan, being a high IQ guy, very technically sound, fundamental, knows exactly what's going on, can make the line calls.
Except he's actually weighs more than 240.
Yeah. The thing with Elflein is that the biggest knock on him is that he's a little bit undersized, and people talk about his athleticism as an issue. That's kind of, it's kind of neutralizing the interior line, and, he doesn't have to move laterally as often. So I really think the Vikings are setting him up to be...
Hey, you didn't say happy birthday to the birthday...
Did you catch a name on it?
No. I don't even know whose birthday it is. Anyways, it's definitely not sexy, but he's going to come in. Sure. I'd say put him at center. I think Zimmer said he was going to put him at center right away, and just have him start for a decade. I mean, that's all. Set it and forget it. Oh, he's the Ron Popeil whatever oven, convection oven.
Right.
That's what he is.
That in itself, though, that brings up the question, which I'll pose to you. Joe Berger, what do you do with Joe Berger? I mean, he's been your most successful offensive lineman the last couple of years. Where's he go?
He's pretty studly at right guard. If he continues, I mean, that's still up in the air. He's a family.
Got to wonder about his passion for football at this point after.
Yeah, I mean, he's got like 7 kids or something like that. He's a family man.
Balling retirement, that kind of stuff,
And, I think the drafting Isadora definitely helps if he decides to retire, because I think Isadora is going to come in right away and compete with Searles as that backup right guard / maybe.
I think Isadora can come in and compete for a starting gig, to be quite honest with you. Especially if Berger, hypothetically speaking, let's say Berger calls it quits next week. Go and the Vikings are in the same situation that they are. Jeremiah Searles and Willie Beavers are the 2 guys that are kind of set to start at the right guard spot. Searles is kind of a projected guess. And then you've got this guy, Isadora, who's, very athletically sound, fundamentally sound, pro-ready. You just have these question marks about, can he handle power? Can he handle the bull rush from a big guy? Imagine a Linval Joseph coming after him. Can he take that heat? If he can,
I'm mainly worried about his pass blocking.
Right. And just the guys like, the big guys, the Domata Picos, for example, 340-pound guys that just live on the bull rush. You got to wonder about Isadora in that way.
Yeah, and I don't know, ideally, Berger will stick around. Start him at right guard unless one of the kids knocks him out. And then, since you basically only dress 8 offensive linemen on game day, you have Kieran, Easton, maybe. You got Isadora in there. And then you have either Hill or Searles as your swing backup tackle. It's like, that's not bad.
it's considerably improved. You know, people keep saying, our offensive line is still a problem. Yeah, it's absolutely still a problem. It's not a one-year rebuilding process. But in terms of, doing everything you possibly can while not mortgaging your future or mortgaging your salary cap space, I think Rick Spielman and Rob Brzezinski did an excellent job preparing this team for the future. And, Riley Reef comes out of Detroit as a guy that's kind of a meh signing, right? A solid starter that you're
seems
about.
Meh because he had a down year last year when they moved him to right tackle. But left tackle years before,
pretty solid. And this is one thing that I want to point out is that he's 27 years old. He's hitting his prime right now. We could see a different Riley Reef. He's playing for his hometown team now. I don't know, man. I think he's got higher potential than a lot of people are giving him credit for.
Yeah, and since we're on the free agents, Mike Remmers, as we know, was a Vikings training camp body a couple years ago, and we always remember the Super Bowl when Von Miller. Well, he
shredded him.
He handed Von Miller the MVP trophy. It was great, but other than that, he's been a solid, serviceable NFL right tackle. Maybe is going to be a better guard. My whole pipe dream is I'm on Team Rashad Hill. Eventually, Rashad Hill develops into that starting prototypical NFL left tackle. He's got all the measurables. Let's see if he can progress. You kick Riley Reef over to right tackle, kick Remmers into right guard, and then you just go eat.
I hope you continue to bring up Rashad Hill's name on your show because I think the Vikings fan base needs to remember this guy's name because he came out of nowhere and it was last game of the season, and I think a lot of people have forgotten about him since then. But the performance he put on against a very solid, Leonard Floyd is no joke. That was a tough pass rush.
Unless he eats too many biscuits.
I think that Hill really has some upside. That was his second career game in the NFL, and he put on a lights-out performance that just shredded anything that Searles, Clemmings, any of the guys had been in there the entire season long.
And, what strikes me, he's obviously got the physique. He's got long arms. He was never out of balance. He was always in control, which – I don't know, really impressive. Like, I'm sure that D coordinators will pick up on his weaknesses and they'll throw extra things at him. But just coming in cold like that, and by the way, he wouldn't have played unless TJ got quote unquote hurt.
Right. So he was ready to go. I think that's one of those things that I think is very impressive in itself. When a guy comes into a game when he wasn't planning on playing at all, he comes into a game and he's ready to roll and he absolutely dominates. It says a lot about his character, I think.
Yeah. That's sort of what pisses me off about the coaching staff is that you claim this guy off of Jacksonville's practice squad early in the season, and he's a healthy scratch all throughout the year. And then he finally dresses week 17. You're not going to make the playoffs. You're still playing TJ, even though you know exactly what you have in TJ. And just by happenstance, you get ass lucky by finding out, maybe this kid can actually play just because TJ got hurt.
Yeah, it's one of those head scratches for sure. I think a lot of the question marks where I feel like a lot of fans were wondering why was Clemmings still in there. I think it was to get some consistency on an offense that had absolutely no consistency last year. I mean, obviously Turner gets fired mid-season. You're trying to find some constant, and I guess the constant was TJ Clemmings, unfortunately.
Yeah, like I remember last year the stat that was there was like, well, the Minnesota Vikings 2015 offensive line, the only group to play all 16 games together. It's like, that's not a compliment. They were still ass.
Yeah. It's it's a sorry situation, but I really do think that, from not just an optimistic approach, from an objective standpoint, this Vikings offensive line will be a lot better. And I think that even an average offensive line will prove to be a huge difference maker for Sam Bradford, Dalvin Cook, and everyone else that's, being protected by it.
Another sorry situation, except for life goes on, is Sharif Floyd, and I don't think he ever plays it down again in the NFL. That's unfortunate, but need some defensive line help, especially 3-tech. Got Jaleel Johnson out of Iowa. Tell me about him.
Jaleel Johnson is he's a guy that is high motor, high intensity player that right now his strongest asset as a pass rusher in the 3-technique role is the bull rush. He's got to get a little bit more creative. His hands need some work. I think that he has moments where he's able to bat down the hands of a solid guard, but for the most part, I think he needs to get more creative and he needs to kind of just become more professional, more consistent in his technique. But he's got the body. His combine performance wasn't outstanding by any means. I think it actually probably hurt his draft stock and might have actually helped him fall to the Vikings at the top of the first round. But I think that this is a guy that's going to be an immediate rotational guy with Tom Johnson. And I think that, over the course of time, I think he can absolutely develop into a starting quality player.
That's not bad value in the 4th round.
It's terrific value.
Yeah. And so we're excited about that. Like Elfline Johnson, not exactly the sexiest, but building blocks are what you need.
Sure.
2nd, 4th rounder, a little bit, the first head scratcher. And, of course, Spielman, he was having too good of a draft. Like, it was, I was going to bring up this analogy. Yeah. It was like Talladega Nights. You seen that movie?
Sure.
It's like when everything's going good, and then the dad, Gary Cole, is like, everything's going a little bit too good. I'm getting a little itchy. And then they get kicked out of Applebee's. And I feel like that was this draft. And Ben Gedeon, linebacker out of Michigan, not going to flash, probably not going to be a starter, maybe a little bit overdrafted. I mean, solid kid. I mean, he's going to try hard for sure. He's going to be a special teams guy, but I don't know. Especially with Jake Butt on the board. I was like, and then PA was like, Michigan fans are going to love this pick. And I was like, here it is. It's Jake Butt. No, shit.
Yeah, especially, the one that really bugged me was that Jalen Reeves-Maven, the Tennessee linebacker with a considerably higher ceiling, much better coverage prospect, which, that's what's really been grinding my gears lately is the Vikings' inability to cover tight ends at the end of the season last year. I would have loved to see him take Reeves-Maven, especially in the fourth round there.
He went to Detroit.
Great. That's a perfect opportunity to grab a guy with, high ceiling, and you don't have to worry so much about the floor. But they take this guy in Gideon who, I've spent a lot of time on him the last couple of days trying to figure out this pick. And the best explanation I can give you is that, this is a high spark guy. So if you're a follower of spark, believer in it, I know the Seattle Seahawks, for one, are big believers in it. High in that regard, solid tester.
Which branch of the spark is? Did you play college basketball?
I think that's
top left quadrant.
Something like that. I think you're in the right general vicinity there. I'm not an expert on the spark area there, but I think that Gideon he looks so much like Chad Greenway, and I don't want to be the guy that compares a white guy to a white guy, but in terms of just being a kind of a psychopath as a linebacker, a guy that's really going to give 110%, and he never gives up. This guy is absolutely relentless to the tackle. He played with Taco Charlton, Jabril Peppers, Chris Wormley, all these outstanding athletes in Michigan, and he found a way to be productive without really being noticed. And that's kind of Chad Greenway's MO, in my opinion.
You mean the last player that the Vikings actually franchised? Yeah.
They've only done it twice. Was it twice in 20-something years of franchise?
Kleinsasser, the other one.
Kleinsasser and Greenway,
and I don't know, I'm sure Gedeon's going to be a very solid player. And with Kendricks and Barr playing so much sub package, you don't really need a true three-down replacement there. So I kind of get it. But I also feel like we had a similar value in Kentrell Brothers.
Sure. I think that the question this kind of raises is, when you make that selection instead of drafting a coverage linebacker or an outside linebacker to be general about it, what does this mean for Eric Kendricks' role moving forward here? Mike Zimmer's talked a lot about how he's a more natural will linebacker and not a Mike guy, even though he has excelled in a quote Mike role, which I really think it's kind of a glorified outside linebacker role, playing so much nickel. But what does this mean for Eric Kendricks moving forward? Is Gideon going to step in there and be that Mike guy that plays 20 to 25 snaps in the base, and then you got Barr and Kendricks out there in your nickel that are playing the vast majority of the snaps?
Yeah, I think that would be ideal because I made this case before that true middle linebacker, like Brian Urlacher is a bad example because he was a cover 2 middle linebacker. I digress. But like Dick
Patrick
Butkus.
Willis.
Yeah, like Patrick Willis. That's gone the way of the running back where it's completely diminished since everyone's in sub-package all the time. And Kendricks, I know that Zimmer's sort of had a hard-on for saying, we're not moving him. He's our middle linebacker, blah, blah, blah. It's like, Kendricks has had his health issues, and moving him to where he's able to freelance a little bit more at the weak side, he's going to be in all the nickels, so base is sort of immaterial. It's like, just take some of the hits off of him, like an extra 30 hits during the season, keep him a little bit fresher, and just use a rotation of bodies, just absorb those hits like people are doing with running backs nowadays. You stick Brothers in the middle. You stick Gideon in the middle.
I love that, yeah. I made a case for Kentrell Brothers being a potential fix-up job at the Mike linebacker spot, and Eric Kendricks bumping out to that weak side. And think about the best moments of Eric Kendricks' career. Some of them, for example, the Tennessee Titans interception for touchdown last season. all of the tackles for loss on rush attempts that are coming to the outside. He's at his best when he's in space and able to be instinctive and, think based off of his knowledge of the game and what he expects to come. And when you're inside, kind of playing in a small vicinity where the zone coverage is limited for reasons like Kentrell Brothers, because guys on the inside technically generally aren't great cover guys. Kendricks, he just makes more sense on the weak side. I think you get tremendous value in that regard, and I think it's it's really a shame to not play him in that role, because I think he's so perfect for it.
Yeah, and we've been making this case for, basically since Kendricks got here. But as soon as Zimmer does that, they'll be like, "Oh, Zimmer's the genius again." It's like, we've been yelling about this for 2 goddamn years. No.
Right.
Speaking of, I have no segue. Rodney Adams, a wide receiver out of Florida, needed help at kick returner. We need some speed upgrade in the wide receiver group too. Adams checks both those boxes.
Absolutely. This is a guy that the Cordero Patterson camp that hasn't quite gotten over his departure for Oakland. They will love.
So 2016 sucked for the Vikings, and also for a number of other reasons I heard, but it's okay. 2017 is upon us. Vikings fans, let's get going. All off season, Purple for the Win coming right at you through free agency, the draft, and OTAs and training camp. Here we go. Get the show on 1500 ESPN, Podcast One, and the Podcast One app. And come back into the Blue Door Pub Thunderdome, and you love it. And what'd you say? It was Puerta de Azul?
La Puerta Azul.
Oh.
That was before it got Americanized and expanded around here. So, back in the St. Paul location, the smaller one down on
the broom
Snelling.
closet.
Exactly, the broom closet. Snelling and Marshall.
Oh, man.
La Puerta Azul.
Well, now, was it Mexican themed, like the Mexican blues?
Yeah, it had Mexican food and everything.
Wow.
It was was a completely different style. They literally just changed it to the Blue Door.
Because pardon my pig Spanish, but La Puerta de Azul is
La Puerta
Blue Door?
Azul. Yeah. Azul is blue. Puerta is door.
Hell yeah.
La is the. There you go.
You learn something new every day. Get down to the new Nuevo Blue Door Pubs, all 3 locations.
There's some Spanish.
University on Como, Longfellow, if you're in Minneapolis, or St. Paul, the OG. All the details, thebdp.com. Brand new menu. They got some good stuff. Testimony. BJ, how was the classic?
Excuse me?
How was the classic?
Oh, it's absolutely outstanding as always.
Yeah. And I got the... All right, so... I have a stupid weight loss bet, except it's actually paying off. And we'll document that more as it goes. But, the chicken sandwich with some bacon and eggs is delicious. Is delectable. Yeah. So get on down to the Blue Door Pubs. Now, if this is jumping around, we have explanation. So it cut off the last 15 seconds of whatever BJ was saying. For some reason, maybe it just committed suicide. Maybe it just pulled a Aaron Hernandez like, I'm out of here, deuces. Yeah.
I think I was talking about Bucky Hodges, which is, it's fine because I imagine we'll be talking about him later on anyway. So
we'll get back to Isidore. Why don't we jump into Hodges right away?
Okay, let's do it.
I'm all in on Hodges. He's a wide receiver. He's not a tight end.
Absolutely, yes.
And I was talking to Jay Reed, draft scout last night. He is the Detroit tight end Joseph Arie. Yeah, where he just came in out of nowhere. Had no other skills besides red zone, going up and get it, and then had 2 or 3 touchdown games.
Yep.
And then I was out of the league. Yeah. Except I think Hodges will have more staying power.
I have higher hopes for Bucky Hodges, but think about what Foria was able to do for Detroit. That was a guy that I believe he caught 6 touchdowns one year, and literally on 12 catches or something ridiculous like that. That's my thing with Bucky Hodges, is that even if he doesn't develop a more well-rounded skill set to kind of actually become a real tight end. Like you said, he's basically a split end wide receiver at this point. Basically the same position as Laquan Treadwell, but we're calling him a tight end for some reason. Even if he doesn't develop that full blocking skill set, that ability to kind of line up at the edge of the offensive line, I think that he's an immediate impact player situationally, which is something I've been talking about that's very important.
Yeah.
He can affect the red zone, and the Vikings have not had a red zone guy in It's got to be since Sidney Rice, right?
But
4 or 5 years.
Kyle Rudolph is so good.
Yeah, I mean, when Kyle Rudolph is dropping, ridiculous passes against the Oakland Raiders when he's wide open in the red zone.
My thing, I've been hard on Rudolph. I gave him props last year when he played well. But he's a middle of the field, between the 20s weapon.
Yeah, he's a guy that is able to.
He is what he is.
I think that he's better in an open space and in a contained space, where Hodges, I think, dominates in a contained space where you're just not able. He's forced to go one-on-one against guys that simply can't match up with his size and athleticism. I mean, how many guys do you know that can run a 4.5? They're 6 feet 6 inches tall, long arms. They can jump 39.5 inches in the air. I mean, he's a dominant red zone mismatch. Yeah. Sidney Jones can't cover it. Xavier Rhodes can't cover him from a physical standpoint. From a physical standpoint.
Man, the one-on-ones like in the corner of the end zone during training camp. That's going to be pretty amazing.
I was thinking about Pat Elflein against Jaleel Johnson will be interesting because that's technique against power right there from the start.
And I'm high on Bucky Hodges. Like Rudolph's contract is basically all the guaranteed money gets sucked out in coming up on next year, and David Morgan, solid for what he is. Probably the H-back, much more of a blocker. Kind of underrated hands. Didn't really show up that much last year because of the injury. But, pair him up with Hodges. They can do some damage.
I really like the idea of combining, implementing more 2 tight end sets. I think that we were kind of disappointed as Vikings fans when Norv Turner didn't do that instantly with Michael Pruitt on his roster. And I think Bucky Hodges is kind of an upgraded version of Pruitt because it's a similar skill set.
You watch your mouth. No.
I love Michael Pruitt as well, don't get me wrong. But I just see him as a guy that's an athletic mismatch that if you line up 2 tight ends and you get a little bit creative in the scheme and throw them out on a fade route that has, for example, Stephon Diggs cross over the middle of the field, you have to pick your poison there, and you end up getting a one-on-one mismatch in the back corner. I trust Bucky Hodges to come down with that touchdown 10 times out of 10.
Bucky Hodges over under 4.5 touchdowns in 2017.
I'm going to say under, but slightly. I'm going to say he has 4 touchdowns in 2017.
Going back to Joseph Fourier, only played in 2013 and 14. Hasn't had work since. 23 career games, 24 career catches, 8 touchdowns.
It's pretty close, right? Yeah. There you go.
Man.
That's value right there.
Yeah. I mean, you get a 6th-round tight end for a couple of years, and he puts up red zone touchdowns. I mean, shit, yeah.
Absolutely, especially for a guy like Sam Bradford who can place the ball wherever he wants.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really nice luxury to have Bucky Hodges next to Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, all these other weapons that the Vikings already have on offense.
Speaking of Bradford, if you had to bet a crisp $100 bill, like brand new from the mint, just put in circulation, who is the Vikings starting quarterback week 1, 2018?
Sam Bradford.
Sam Bradford.
Yeah.
Long-term extension or franchise?
Franchise tag.
Yeah.
I think that the Vikings will wait it out as long as possible with Teddy Bridgewater. And I've said this before, I'm very optimistic. I really do believe Teddy Bridgewater when he says his purpose won't be denied.
Yep.
But at the same time, from a business standpoint, you need to play it safe here. You've got a solid quarterback in Sam Bradford. You don't want to risk blowing him away just in the potential that Teddy Bridgewater might return to the full strength.
We can get Josh Allen.
Yeah,
since we're going to go 3-13 this year.
There you go.
And I love that Peter King just rolls out a hand grenade on Vikings Twitter and then just leaves and just like ghost corrects it. Yeah, go ahead. Because I think we're all pretty convinced that he confused Teddy's injury with Sharif Floyd's.
Absolutely.
When he's talking about the nerve damage, it's like, come on, Peter. Come on, man.
Rookie mistake by an absolute crafty vet in the biz for sure.
And, Twitter is pretty hard on Peter King. I think it's definitely a generational issue. But he came out with this, probably his best article in a calendar year about being inside the war room with the 49ers, which is massively fascinating. And then just sort of a throwaway paragraph, just like bones Vikings fans.
Yeah, that's it's not a good look for sure.
And since we're on quarterbacks, what do you think of the tolling thing? The tolling report is like, because everyone's talking about it almost ad nauseum. I'm kind of sick of it because I don't think it's going to come to that point. But they're like, if Teddy's on the pup and then they put him on IR, his contract tolls and we get him for 2018. Cool.
I think it's an absolute, it's a great luxury, and it makes not picking up that 5th-year option a lot easier to do if you're Rick Spielman. I think at this point, now that you haven't picked up his 5th-year option, you hope that he sticks on that PUP list for an entire season long because then you get one more year to rehab him and hope it works out.
My whole thing is that I think Teddy, this is just a complete gut feeling, is not going to be ready to start the year. I think he starts the year on the pup. I think he'll be physically ready to go by midseason. And if the Vikings are sort of, I don't want to say malicious, they're taking advantage of the situation of, oh, well, we're going to keep you on pup because you're not ready to go. But Teddy's like, I'm ready to go. This knee is 100%. I think there's going to be grievances with NFLPA because if I'm in Teddy's spot, I either want my freedom or I want to get out of here. Like, you saw Mike Glennon got paid, and
right.
A team will take a chance on sort of the toilet paper pay-as-you-go contract like they did with Mike Glennon.
Cleveland did with Robert Griffin III after he tilted his knee, so anything's possible.
And I don't know. Like, people are always talking about, like, oh, it's a business, it's that, it's strategery. It's like, is it going to come to that point? I don't know.
I kind of hope not. Yeah. At the same time, part of me really wants to see a fair shot, Sam Bradford versus Teddy Bridgewater, everything up in the air, beginning training camp, both quarterbacks fully healthy, and see which one wins just to end the debate finally.
Yeah. Well, it's like the chick that you knew in college, super hot, could get any guy that you wanted. And, never settled down, but wants to settle down now. Maybe she's in her late 30s and wants a couple of kids. And, she's not exactly reeling in all the big fish anymore, but you see someone safe, someone's got a good job. Maybe he's like a CMO or a CIO or something, solid career. And he's like, not the best looking, maybe a little schlubby. He's like, that's Sam Bradford. That's stability, not going to blow you away, but that's something we could settle with.
Point blank here, simple question. Do you think that the Vikings can win a Super Bowl with Sam Bradford at the helm?
Yes.
I do too.
Yeah.
See, that's my biggest thing here is that when I say don't throw away a guy like Sam Bradford waiting on Bridgewater, I really think that the Vikings have a guy that can, he's not going to make guys around him better, but if you get all these playmakers, and then Spielman just picked up a lot of them, he can really make the offense look good. And with Mike Zimmer's defense, all you really need is like a top 15-ish offense that can be productive and churn up some clock in the fourth quarter, and you're good to go.
I'll put in the caveat that you can win a Super Bowl with Sam Bradford. You won't win it because of Sam Bradford.
Yes, I would completely agree with that.
Everyone goes to the Trent Dilfer comparison. I don't like the one. I like Brad Johnson with the Bucs a little bit better because that offense had a little bit of sizzle, had a decent run game with Dunn and Allstott, but had an amazing defense. Opportunistic one, and that's what it's going to have to take. Like, do I think he can go out there and win it YOLO style like Brady has? Probably not. But we've seen in recent years a defense can carry a quarterback across the finish line. I mean, look at Denver a couple years ago.
How about Joe Flacco winning a Super Bowl? I think that kind of translates well to Sam Bradford because, first of all, let me get it out of the way. I don't think that Joe Flacco's an elite quarterback. Oh. I think that he's the type of guy that he makes guys better around him situationally, like Sam Bradford does, in my opinion. And for the same reason, Baltimore was able to carry a very strong roster all the way to a ring. I think Sam Bradford can do the same.
I think Bradford and Flacco are on a similar plane as far as like in that top 13, 14, 15-ish.
Different quarterbacks,
but Flacco played out of his mind in that postseason. He was insane.
He had an Eli Manning type postseason.
Yeah. So. And Sam Bradford is. I take that back. I was going to say
he was at his best towards the beginning of the season when he was connecting at a high rate and finding Stephon Diggs like seemingly every other play. He looked very good, and if he could get hot like that with Mike Zimmer's defense, it all hinges on this defense that he's been building for the last 3 years. I really think the Vikings have a chance to do some damage if they can stay healthy and that offensive line can protect and they can get the running game going well enough just to be able to control the time of possession battle and be able to run out the clock when they need to at the end of the game.
Yeah, and the fact that last year was Sam Bradford's best season in the NFL kind of gives me hope because it was recent and it was with the Vikings, it was with Shermer, but also it was like, oh, wow, he's the number 1 overall pick and you've had 8 years, man. Or 7, or how many years have been in the league.
Quarterbacks are a strange breed. They develop. There's no right answer to when and how to develop a quarterback. And so you see guys like Rich Gannon who hit their peak at 40. Yeah. Why can't Sam Bradford's peak be at 29 under Pat Shermer? That's my answer to that.
I think Rich Gannon lives out in Mound.
Yeah, I mean he's around here.
Yeah, I mean McNabb lives around here too. It's crazy.
Yeah, a lot of them live up in the Mendota Heights area and the Hidden Creek region. I know that's where Matt Burke is.
Oh,
so.
well, there you go. Continuing on with not continuing, just getting back to the draft. We skipped over Danny Isadora, but not for good reason. I believe in this man.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a guy that we talked about a little bit already because he came up instantly because this is one of 2 offensive linemen, which I think probably bothers a lot of Vikings fans that they only took 2 offensive linemen. But I'm here to tell you that I don't think the Vikings needed more offensive linemen. I think they just needed to table that offensive line issue, or excuse me, that offensive tackle issue for one season until they have a first-round pick so they can, upgrade it in that way. And I think that Isadora is a guy that really has the opportunity that, depending on what you do with Joe Berger, depending on if Pat Elflein is established as the starting center to start the season, this is a guy that really, do you think he's better than Willie Beavers? Because I certainly do.
Oh, yeah, and Willie Beavers' death sentence is great.
And from what I've seen from Jeremiah Searles on, as a bookend, I don't see him transitioning all that well to the interior. So nothing in my mind tells me that Isadora can't beat out these guys. So I would really keep an eye on this guy because I think he has the ability to be a starter in the NFL. It's just, will he get a chance and when will it come?
Yeah. Oh, looking in the 2018 mock draft, we could take where does the tackle go?
I was looking at that tackle class. It didn't look great. I haven't done any work on it.
Mike McGlinchey.
Yeah.
Tackle out of Notre Dame. Sure.
There you go.
Yeah. Way too soon, but we'll see there. I mean, Isadora's going to come in right away.
Sure.
Be a high-end backup, hopefully.
At the very worst.
And, if he becomes a starter down in 2 or 3 seasons and he starts for a couple of years, he goes the Anthony Herrera route, I mean, that's great value for a 5th-round pick.
One thing I want to say about Danny Isadora is that this is a guy that the Vikings and him both made a point about how good he is at playing through injury. He played through a torn meniscus at Miami, and when the Twin Cities media asked him about playing through that and playing 39 consecutive games at right guard, he said, it's my job to be out on the field, so I'm going to do that if I'm able to. And, the Vikings have offensive line injury issues, so I think it's really nice to hear that from a guy.
Well, Khalil only missed a couple of games until the end, and he always played through injuries, so I don't know if that's a positive or negative.
There's two sides of the same coin there.
All right, someone's only got really one side is Stacey Coley. Burner.
Absolutely.
Burner.
Yeah. He's the type of guy that you're catching lightning in the bottle with him.
Yeah.
I really think that this is a bad comparison because I don't think the ceiling is this high, but I think he's like Deshaun Jackson in that he's the type of guy where he's going to catch 2 or 3 passes in the game, and he's going to
BJ guaranteed that Stacey Coley is going to be Deshaun Jackson. Putting that out there.
He's the type of guy that's going to make the most out of his catches. I believe his per-catch average at Miami was 13.4 yards per catch, so he's lightning in the bottle. If you get the ball in his hands, he's going to do something with it, and that's the type of player that Deshaun Jackson has always been for me. He's a guy that's, you probably had him in fantasy football before, right?
Yeah.
1 catch, 80 yards, touchdown, gets you, 14 fantasy points?
On the first drive of the day, and then he gets nothing the rest of it.
Exactly.
It's like, well, shit.
That's the type of player that I see Stacey Coley as. So, again, another situational guy that I think can stretch the field in a 5 wide receiver set, or potentially a replacement for Jarius Wright. He might be on notice more so than he was last season.
I was going to say, bring up Rodney Adams and Stacey Coley, drafting 2 smaller wide receivers with speed that can have slot ability. I think the writing's on the wall for Jarius Wright.
Kind of seemed like it last year, didn't it?
Well, I mean, he got lapped by Thielen and didn't get much run, was a healthy scratch for most of the year. I think he was only kept around because of his contract, but now that gets pretty easy to eat, so I think it might be deuces.
I would personally agree with you, especially if they go out and grab another wide receiver somewhere in free agency, whether that's Michael Floyd or somebody else that may come up. Jarius Wright seems to have been in the doghouse for no real reason, but it kind of seems like it's been a long time now. It was the end of the 2015 season, I think, that he kind of started disappearing.
Yeah.
Basically gone all of last year. I would say that he's definitely on notice.
Yeah, and if you stay in Zimmer's doghouse long enough, like Sharif Floyd, your career ends.
Yeah, Zimmer calls up the surgeon and has him, screw up surgery.
Hey, man. By the way, of course the Vikings would be the first team that has the 5th-year option injury guarantee kick in.
There you go.
Yeah. So, I'm a little concerned about Anthony Barr, pick up the $12.3 million. I understand that he played all 16 games last year, except he's never been the picture of health. Do you think he bounces back? I mean, he's gotta.
I think so. I really want to believe. I have absolutely zero confirmation on this, but I want to believe that he was playing hurt last season and that he just wasn't himself, because that was not the same 55 that I saw as a rookie or as a sophomore.
Yeah, like hesitant, not wrapping up, missing tackles. I mean, it became a cliche week after week.
He's playing flat-footed in coverage. You know, the one game that I continue to go back on when people talk about Anthony Barr's coverage issues was against the Arizona Cardinals when David Johnson was coming out of the backfield on him. It was like he's on his back, like he's leaning backwards, and Johnson could basically choose which direction he wanted to go. And this is Anthony Barr. He's an attacker.
Well, I mean, it was David Johnson.
Yeah, I understand that, but at the same time, I expect Anthony Barr to be a little bit more physical. I've always thought that he's a very well-prepared linebacker, down-to-earth guy that studies hard, I imagine. It was out of character, I think. I think it was a fluke year that he somehow made it to the Pro Bowl anyways.
Yeah. David Johnson, the guy who I was advocating for, the Adrian trade him for a late second-round pick, would take David Johnson, pair with McKinnon, but I digress.
God. Were you a David Cobb guy or a David Johnson guy?
I was David Johnson, the Miami running back. What's his name? Boise State. Why am I blanking here?
J.J.?
Yeah, J.J. And I did lump David Cobb in there, too. Yeah.
Okay. Because I will admit that I was definitely a David Cobb guy over David Johnson.
2 out of 3 ain't bad. Next up, continue with the 4 7th-round pick. What'd you make of Spielman making all these moves? Made 2 trade-ups and then still ended up with 11 picks.
Typical, for one. This is a guy that out of the last 5 years, I believe he's had 10 or more picks in 4 of them.
Yeah.
He loves to accumulate his picks. Jordan Reed and I actually had a nice conversation about this the other day. It's just like picking up lottery tickets. Every single time you add another lottery ticket, and the biggest thing here is that the 5th, 6th, and 7th rounder basically have very similar bust rates.
Yep.
So why the difference between 4 7th rounders and 4 4th rounders, or 4 5th rounders, not all that much.
Yeah.
I like Spielman's a gambler. He's a trader, and I think that the reason why you saw him pick up all these guys is because he has some belief that one of these guys will pan out. I think if he gets one of these 4th-round picks, it'd be a major hit for him for sure.
Of the 4 7th-rounders, Coley, Ifeadi Onaibo, Elijah Lee, and Jack Tacho, who would you bet on?
Elijah Lee, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
A lot of people like Elijah Lee in the 4th round. Like some people like Elijah Lee better than Ben Gideon.
Elijah, I mean, when I was at Winter Park, I actually said verbatim that if they pick Elijah Lee, I will be able to forget about the Ben Gideon pick, because I think that Elijah Lee offers a lot of upside. He's just going to take a year or so to develop his tools, and at the same time, he can still impact on special teams. I think this is the guy that makes the 53 in September. I think that he's an immediate impact guy because he's so rangy, because he's such an instinctive, fearless tackler, that I think you'll see him be an impact guy on special teams immediately.
Yeah. Sorry, Edmund Robinson. Sorry, Emmanuel Lamore.
Edmund Robinson's kind of getting lost in the shuffle, too.
Yeah.
Stephen Weatherly as well. BJ Dubose. People are starting to forget about some of these guys as they bring in more talent.
Yeah. Ooh. All right, so 7th-round linebackers, long arms, rangy.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. Robinson was Edmund was Marla Maples, and now Elijah Lee is Melania Trump.
Works for me.
All right, so backpedaling a little bit on Ifeadi Onaibo, the DN at Northwestern, sub-package guy, situational pass rusher, put up big numbers, never really started, but just another of those lotto tickets, a la Stephen Weatherly of, hey, we're going to bet on athleticism a little bit. I'm all right with it.
One thing that I've talked about in terms of a draft strategy to follow is you find a guy in the late round that has one tool with another tool that can be developed, possibly another one after that as well. Odenigbo definitely has one tool. He's an outstanding pass rushing weapon, but he's not even a professional in terms of run defending. He does not set the edge well at all. He's easy to wash out despite that hulking frame that he has, but he can definitely rush the passer. So I think that he's destined for the practice squad initially, but this is definitely a guy that if he can just become average as a run defender and be able to, you could slot him in there on 3rd down, 3rd and long situations and throw the house at him. I think he's a solid lottery ticket, let's put it that way.
And last pick for the Vikings is Jack Tacho, the cornerback that they're going to move to safety out of North Carolina State. Now, if they could only take Jack Tacho's head and put it on J-Ron Curse's body,
seriously,
we'd be perfect.
Seriously. Yeah, this is a very high-Q football player, works hard, knows his playbook, knows what his teammates are doing as well. Leadership qualities, ball skills out the roof for this guy, by the way. Tocho has a knack for finding the ball when it's still in the air. He has a lot of, his highlight reel is very impressive. It's also misleading because I think that he's a very raw talent that, again, destined for the practice squad initially, but I like the ability to, develop another skill. He's already got the ball skills in the coverage and zone. If he can get some man coverage skills and become more consistent as a tackler, I think this is the guy you could see in the 53-man roster in a couple of years down the road.
All right, so right now, 2017, of the 4 7th-round picks, Coley, Odenigbo, Lee, and Tocho. Who would you bet is the favorite to make the roster this year, 53 opening week?
I would say Lee strictly because I think that he is a guy that can impact the game as a special teamer immediately. And with guys like Audie Cole gone now, the Vikings and Mike Prefer are probably looking for some updates to their special teams units. I think that Stacey Coley is probably just a gunner on special teams. I don't see him as in any other role, whereas Elijah Lee, I like him all over the place. So I would bet, for strictly because he has more opportunities on the Vikings roster, I would bet on Lee. But I would say that Stacey Coley's probably, I would also bet on Stacey Coley to make it as well.
Yeah. Moving on to the UDFAs, and then we'll get you out of here for the night. Who do you have your eye on?
Eric Wilson from Cincinnati, the linebacker.
Yep.
Absolutely. A lot like Elijah Lee, honestly. Very rangy safety, great coverage skills, both in man, instinctive, a little bit undersized, gets washed out. I like him if he can put on some muscle mass, and he can become, like we say so many times about other linebackers, if he can become a more consistent, fundamental tackler when the lights turn on, I like him a lot to develop into something special. The other guy, and honestly, I'm not impressed with this undrafted free agent class at all. Yep. The other guy I do have my eye on is Aviante Collins, the, quote, tackle from TCU. Yep. I think he's a bona fide guard in the NFL because he has the athleticism to move laterally, but he doesn't have the size and he doesn't have the arm length to really stretch out against some of these big body, creative defensive ends like Von Miller. I don't see him being able to stop a guy like Von Miller. At the same time, I think that he has the athleticism and he sets his anchor well. So I think that he's a guy that, dark horse to make the 53-man roster as an undrafted free agent.
He could be.
We do have a need at offensive line.
He could be our Tiny Richardson finally coming home to roost with two good knees. Last up with the quarterbacks, since we always love the quarterbacks. Wes Lunt, the quarterback out of Illinois, big guy, 6'5", 225. Had some injury issues. Now, do you think he's going to be more Heineke, sticking around a little bit, or more Joe Stave, not so much?
I would say Joe Stave.
Yeah. I forget that Stave was 6'5", 222.
Lunt is, honestly, I think Joe Stave is a better quarterback than Lunt, to be quite honest with you. Yeah. I think that Lunt has the NFL frame, but he doesn't have the NFL talent.
Yep.
So.
And also, on a tryout basis, my alma mater, Jack Nelson, Winona State, bring it on.
There you go.
He's 6'4".
Hey, like I said, I covered him, I believe it was twice. He was in Bismarck once against UMary and absolutely lit him up. He knows how to throw the ball deep downfield, and honestly, he's got some pretty great deep ball accuracy. I'm making an obvious claim here. Division II to the NFL is not a leap that most quarterbacks ever make. We were impressed by Heineke coming out of Old Dominican and making the 53.
Yeah. No. So. Old Dominican, that sounds like a really, that sounds like a restaurant that's going out of business.
Old Dominion.
All right. BJ, real appreciate you coming in. What's coming up from you? What should people look for?
Well, over at Vikings Territory, producing as much content in bulk as possible. I'm always trying to bring the heat for sure. We'll be working on some of these Welcome to the Big Show profiles. You'll see that from myself, Austin Belial over there, Sam Newman as well, Drew Mahold. All of us will be pumping out post-draft stuff. And then you can start looking for some feature work, some real hardcore analysis. So something, for example, that I've been trying to get to is figuring out what happened to Anthony Barr last year. So
there you go.
Maybe that's something to look forward to.
Keep an eye out for that. We'll make sure to check it out on Vikings Territory. Also follow him on Twitter at Robert Reidell. BJ, really appreciate you coming in.
All right. Thanks for having me, Andy. It's a pleasure.
and also pleasure, is doing all your shopping on Amazon, bullshow.co. Take you right to the home page, and here's what you do. Bookmark the living hell of it, because same shopping experience, just we get a little taste. We get a couple nickels in our pocket, do that up. And, spread the word. Word of mouth is the way to get it out there. That's how we've grown, and that's how you show the love. Yeah, it's really, you don't have to shop through links. You have to visit our sponsors, but we really wish you should. And just tell a friend. Be like, you're going to be talking with your Vikings friends. You're going to be talking some ish with them. Be like, hey, man. Or like, BJ's like, hey, man. Hey. Purple for the win. Wait, no. What show is this? Andy Carlson in general. Tell them about that. Do that up. Add to the Jerome Homie Army. Show's available on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeart, YouTube, and wherever. At Andy Carlson Show. Thanks, producer Allie Sorensen, for making me not sound so stupid today. But for BJ, I'm Andy Carlson and Young. Sayonara and bye-bye. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to Bull with Andy Carlson, Minnesota's 87th best daily podcast. Download the show on iTunes. Everyone's middle name is Jerome.